The purpose of this meeting is to review the notice of intention for the proposed City of Seattle annexation of North Highline area of Lyle.
Hey, could you get closer to the mic, please?
At the conclusion of this evening's session, the Boundary Review Board will determine whether it is necessary to extend the hearing to June 14, 2016, tomorrow night. We'll now have a roll call.
Evangeline Anderson is excused, and Miguel Beltran is recused. So, Sylvia Bushnell.
Here.
Marilyn Evans. Claudia Hershey.
Here.
Jay Hamlin.
Here.
Laura Casalius.
Here.
Ron Little.
Here.
Paul McCready.
Here.
Jim Polina.
Here.
And Stephen Toy.
Here. Because the public hearing process is new to most citizens, and in order to ensure an effective public review process, I will begin this evening with a brief description of the general purpose of the Boundary Review Board. The board was established by the state legislature in 1967. Every county in Washington state that plans under the Growth Management Act, that is, every urban county, has a Boundary Review Board or an equivalent body permitted by RCW 3693. The board is an independent agency. Our purpose is to provide an opportunity for public review of actions, incorporations, mergers, or other boundary changes. Our board has 11 members. 4 members are appointed by the cities of King County. 4 members are appointed by the office of the King County Executive. 3 members come from special purpose districts such as fire, water, and sewer districts. Members serve 4-year terms. In the matter presently before the board, one member has recused himself, Miguel Beltran, appointed by the cities of King County. In addition, the board is served by 3 staff: Robert Kaufman, Special Attorney General, AAG; Lenore Long, Executive Secretary; and Angelica Vesreyes, Administrative Assistant. Okay, the public hearing will now come to order. The hearing is called to gather facts in the matter of the City of Seattle notice of intention for the annexation of North Highline wide area. A public hearing before this board is a quasi-judicial review. That is, the board functions as a judicial body. A request for review before the board has been filed by a party with standing. The board acts collectively like a judge and is empowered to hear testimony from the applicant, the party seeking review, and members of the public. Following testimony, the board will make a decision on proposed action. The board's decision will be based on the record consisting of the file of written materials, testimony, and exhibits offered at this hearing. The Boundary Review Board is required to base its decision on several regulations and guidelines. Specifically, the board must consider RCW 3693, sections 170, the factors, and 180, the objectives. This is the state law that creates and guides the board. These factors and objectives are printed on your agenda. The board's decision must also be consistent with the State Growth Management Act, with the King County Comprehensive Plan, and with plans and policies adopted by the applicant, the City of Seattle. Our Executive Secretary will now describe the proposal.
Thank you. I intend to do that. Before I get to that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the process. The City of Seattle invoked jurisdiction for this file when they submitted the initial notice of intention. They have been working ever since to try to collaborate with the state to make sure that some of the state money, sales tax rebates that had been available for a while would continue to be available to serve this annexation if it were through. So we've delayed it a bit over time, more than you would normally see an annexation delay. This hearing is very much a public process. You will hear from government agencies. First, the proponent, government agencies, and certainly every member of the public who would like to be heard. It's clear, and was from the beginning, that we won't get to hear from everybody who wants to speak this evening. And that's why we continued it to tomorrow evening if we need to, and even into Thursday evening if it's necessary. It is a standard fact that when we have one of these public hearings, that there are people who wish we had a broader distribution system for notification. So let me tell you that this hearing was noticed in the Seattle Times, in local newspapers and blogs. The law requires us to put up 10 posters. In fact, we put up 39 or 45 of them, depending upon whether people put up one or two. So, yes, there were people probably who did not hear about this who would have liked to, but it has been our effort to try and include as many people as would be interested. And if you have friends and neighbors who couldn't make it tonight but who would like to be a part of this hearing, please help them join us tomorrow evening. We'll be at exactly the same location. So, with that, in January of 2015, the applicant, the City of Seattle in this case, filed a notice of intention with the Boundary Review Board for the North Highline wide area annexation, and you can see maps around the room that clearly pick the boundary of that. This annexation includes 2,045 acres. The estimated population is about 17,500. The area is located immediately adjacent to the southern boundary of the City of Seattle, and its northernmost boundary is primarily formed by southwest Roxbury Street. The southern boundary is formed variously by South 107th Street, South 108th Street, South 116th Street, South 112th Street, and goes on in some locations to South 128th Street. And then we've got Ceola Beach Drive on the west, and the eastern boundary is generally formed by State Route 929, adjacent to the City of Tukwila. The site includes a wide array of single-family zones, multi-family zones, office, neighborhood commercial, community commercial, regional commercial, and public open spaces, lots of parks in this area. The City of Seattle foresees working with the community to establish specific plans for administration of the North Highline wide area throughout 2016. The actual earliest date for an annexation would be November of 2017, and it might even be extended beyond that. The law does not establish any specific requirements. The City of Seattle has indicated that, they would like to be doing additional work with the community before going to election. And we'll hear more about that from the City of Seattle representatives.
At this time, I will ask board members if there are members who have a conflict of interest, such as a personal interest or professional involvement, which might affect your ability or the perception of your ability to fairly hear this proposal. At this time, will you please so indicate for the record? Mr. Florence.
Yes, my name is Jim Paul Hamus, and I was at one time the fire chief of King County Fire District number 26. I was also the fire chief of South King Fire and Rescue. Both of those departments obtained legal services from Mr. Snur and Mr. Quinn, I believe will testify tonight. In addition to that, well, and I should say that I retired from the fire service in 2006, so it's been 10 years since those professional associations. But also, in addition to that, let's say that I've obtained personal legal services from Mr. Smith.
Any other? Has any board member had parte communication with any interested party while this matter has been. If any members have had any ex parte communication with any interested party while this matter has been before us, if so, please disclose that information now. If anyone present here tonight has reason to question the ability of any board member to hear and judge fairly under the doctrine of appearance of fairness, please let us know now. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Kaufman. I'm the attorney for the board, and we are actually going to start the hearing pretty soon. But before we do that, I'm going to go over some rules that are going to apply during the course of the testimony. If any of you would like to speak this evening, there's a sign-up sheet near the entrance to the room. We ask that you please do so. If any of you have exhibits that you would like the board to consider, please provide copies to Ms. Velazquez, who will be sitting on my far left in that corner. Any exhibits that you give to the Boundary Review Board will be retained by the Boundary Review Board through its decision process, through the appeal process from its decision, which is 30 days after the board makes its decision. So generally speaking, for all intents and purposes, if do not give the board an original of something that you may not want back. Copies are fine for the board. To be most effective in your testimony, we ask that you direct your comments to the factors that the board is intended to consider in making its decision, and to the objectives that the board's decisions must advance. And each of those are listed on the listed on the agenda that's also at the front table. And we ask that you please be as brief as possible. It looks like there's going to be a lot of folks here that are going to want to testify tonight, which is great. We want everyone who wants to testify to be heard. However, we do ask that you try not to be overly repetitive. If a witness has already come forward and made a point that you would like to make, it's okay to remind us that a witness has already said something and you agree with that. However, the 3 minutes that individuals will be allowed will be yours. In this particular case, the order that we're going to go in, the City of Seattle is the applicant. They're the proponent of this annexation. They will be allowed 20 minutes for their presentation. Following the City of Seattle, King County representatives will have 15 minutes to testify, and thereafter other governmental units who are interested will each have 10 minutes to testify. Following that testimony from governmental units, the board will take public testimony from community groups and individuals. Each recognized group will have 10 minutes for its presentation. Each individual will have 3 minutes for presentation. We're going to continue this public hearing this evening and tomorrow and possibly into Thursday if necessary, just to make certain that everyone who wants to speak is heard. We do ask that you respect the time limitations that I've just discussed. Ms. Velazquez will be operating a clock. She will be holding up a 1-minute warning, just like she is right now. And we ask that you keep an eye out for that. And when your time limit is up, we ask that you please wrap up your comments so others can speak. To ensure that an orderly process, what we're conducting here, folks, is technically considered a quasi-judicial proceeding, which is kind of a 50-cent word, a way of saying that we want to conduct ourselves to the extent possible as if we were in a courtroom. We want to have the same decorum that we would have in a courtroom, which basically means if you agree with something that a witness is saying, please don't cheer, please don't clap. You wouldn't do that in a courtroom, so please don't do it here. Similarly, if you disagree with the speaker, the time to express disagreement is when it's your turn at the podium. Please don't do it in the form of any noises from the audience. Only the board members may ask questions of the speakers. If a board member does ask a question of the speaker, the time that the speaker takes to answer the board member's question does not count against the time. I'm the attorney for the Boundary Review Board. If the board has any questions of law, it will refer them to me. Following the testimony by the proponents and other governmental units and groups and individuals, the applicant, the City of Seattle, will get the last word. They will have 10 minutes to do a rebuttal. As the city knows, a rebuttal is not the opportunity for the city to present its case all over again. It's an opportunity for the city to address points that speakers have made in the course of the public hearing. When all of the when testimony and exhibits are accepted, the board will close the public hearing and will start its deliberations. I'll just make a comment now. Sometimes and that's not going to happen this evening, it may not even happen tomorrow evening, we'll see how it goes. But when the board closes the public hearing and starts its public deliberations, it might appear that we're ending the meeting and almost inviting people to leave. That is not the message we want to send. The board's deliberations are part of the public process, and you are welcome and invited to stay during the board's deliberations as well. After the board conducts its deliberations, it will instruct staff to prepare a resolution and hearing decision, which will embody the decision of the board. It's anticipated that the board will take that resolution and hearing up at its September 2016 regular meeting and will act on it then. Everything that's being said this evening is being recorded. Copies of the recordings are available for purchase, and if you're interested, please see Evan Velasquez about that. Finally, I mentioned earlier that this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. The board members are here to do their job, and they're looking forward to doing their job. They're looking forward to hearing from each and every one of you. But the only place they can hear from you is right here in this room on the record. And what I'm driving at is during a break or after the meeting, as board members may exit the room to go to their cars or wherever, we ask that you please not approach them because it's entirely inappropriate for the board members to discuss any aspect of this proposal outside of a public hearing. And if you were to approach them, you would probably be ignored. It's not because the board member is being rude to you, it's because they're doing their job, which is to base their decision solely on what evidence they have that's submitted in writing and comes before us in the form of testimony. So at this point, I will ask those who will testify to stand if you're able. And to raise your right hand if you're able. Do each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please have a seat.
We'll begin with calling people to testify now. I would like people to know that in the audience we have we have a Spanish interpreter and a Vietnamese interpreter. So if there's somebody who needs that service, if you would please let Angelica know, she will help you to set it up. Okay, we're going to begin tonight with the City of Seattle, and that is Jim Heaton.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Choi, members of the board, members of the BRB staff, and members of the public, and good evening. Good evening. My name is James Haney. I am an attorney with Ogden Murphy Wallace. My office address is 901 Fifth Avenue, Suite 3500, Seattle, Washington, 98164, and my office telephone number is 206-447-7000. I am special counsel representing the City of Seattle in the annexation proceedings for the North Highline annexation area. With me tonight are Kenny Pittman from the Seattle Office of Intergovernmental Relations and Assistant Fire Chief Jay Hagan of the Seattle Fire Department. I'm going to take the laboring oar in making the city's presentation this evening, but Kenny and Chief Hagan will assist me in answering any questions you may have. Tonight, the City of Seattle asks that you approve the city's North Highline annexation proposal and allow the same to go to a public vote. Tonight, this board has a great opportunity. It is an opportunity to allow the people of North Highline to decide the level of urban services that they wish to receive, and to let them decide whether they will receive those services from the city of Seattle. This is the second phase of Seattle's two-phased approach to annexation of all of the remaining unincorporated territory between Seattle and Burien. The first phase was the Duwamish annexation, which this board approved back in September of 2015 under your file number 2358. You approved that annexation, and that annexation is currently awaiting an election that is scheduled to take place this fall. North Highline, the area that has been variously referred to or previously referred to in board proceedings as Area Y, is the second phase of the city's two-phased approach, and that is the matter before you this evening. Seattle and other jurisdictions in this area have been working for years with the goal of providing a unified government structure for the North Highline area, and the opportunity you have tonight is to allow the people of North Highline to decide whether that unified governance should come from the city of Seattle. As the board knows, and as the executive secretary explained, the North Highline annexation area consists of approximately 2,045 acres of land, the northern boundary of which is coincident with the city of Seattle's current southern boundary, and the southern boundary of which is coincident with the current northern boundary of Burien. And I was struck as I walked in this evening by the aerial photo, which you'll see behind the board to the right, I guess to the board's left, behind you, because you'll see when you look at that aerial photo that this area is intensely urban, and it is an area which, because of its intense urban nature, deserves urban services. Land uses and development on both sides of the current boundaries between Seattle and North Highline are quite similar, with commercial and single-family areas abutting each other. Where the uses across the border are not precisely consistent, there are appropriate transitions between the two, as is the case between the Greenbridge development and single-family areas within Seattle, and as between residential areas in the northeastern areas of North Highline and industrial uses in the city, which are separated by SR 509 and steep slopes. Now, the North Highline annexation area will, in fact, benefit from annexation to the city of Seattle. In the city's brief in support of annexation and in the response we submitted, we have set forth in detail how this annexation meets all of the factors and objectives for the board's review. I'm not going to repeat our brief this evening. I know you've had a chance to read it, and I'm sure we'll appreciate me not repeating it, but I do want to stress several points. First, this annexation makes sense because it unites several neighborhoods that are currently divided from each other by artificial boundaries. The White Center and Delridge neighborhoods will be reunited by this proposal. The Glendale neighborhood will be linked with the South Park area, and neighborhoods that are currently divided by roads, that is, neighborhoods like Roxbury Heights along 30th Avenue Southwest and the South Delridge Triangle will be reunited by this annexation. Second, as I said a moment ago, this area is intensely urban, and it deserves urban services that Seattle is uniquely positioned to provide by virtue of the fact that this annexation is within Seattle's potential annexation area. Seattle's potential annexation is the only potential annexation area that this area is in, and because financially the city of Seattle is the only city that will have the ability to serve this area. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But the third thing I wanted to say is that this annexation makes sense in that it will ensure that high levels of urban municipal services are provided to the residents and businesses, and that service levels will in fact improve. As the declaration of Chief Wilski from the Seattle Police Department, which is in the record, indicates, The Seattle Police Department's law enforcement services will be extended into this area with staffing levels that greatly exceed those that are currently provided by the County Sheriff's Department. In addition to the SPD patrols, which will have a minimum of 12 officers and 2 sergeants on duty at any time, the residents and businesses of North Highline will have access to community police team officers, anti-crime team officers, detective services, SWAT, the bomb and arson squad, and the gang unit. Now, in addition to police services, there will be additional social and community services that will be improved in this area. Seattle will offer, through its Department of Neighborhoods, neighborhood matching grants, Keep Hatch community gardens, public outreach and engagement liaisons, and Find It Fixing community blocks. It will offer planning services through the Seattle Office of Planning and Community Development. It will offer home visiting programs, preschool programs, at-risk youth grants, student health services, and summer learning programs through the Seattle Department of Early Learning. It will offer no-cost business consulting, business loan programs, one-stop problem-solving, action planning, and other business-related services to the businesses within the White Center area and throughout North Highline through the City of Seattle's Office of Economic Development. And library services will be offered through Seattle Public Libraries, which includes continued access to the King County Library System. I submitted for the record tonight an exhibit. It's marked as Exhibit A. It is the reciprocal agreement that Seattle Public Libraries has with King County Library Systems, and it shows that individuals, patrons of the library system within both jurisdictions are allowed to check out books and return books from the other library system. So we do have a reciprocal agreement in place. Utility services will remain the same. I want to stress this point because there were some letters that were submitted to the board from utility service districts. This action, as the board knows, is to annex the North Highline area. Assumption of the utility districts is not an issue that is before you this evening, and assumption is a separate process that requires separate review by this board and potentially a separate vote by the people within those districts. And I would say that not only is assumption not proposed this evening, but as we pointed out in our brief, assumption, at least of the sewer districts, is highly unlikely in the next 6 years because the tax incentive that the city is relying on to be able to close the financial gap between the revenues necessary to serve this area and the urban services that it requires the tax incentive provides that it just cannot be used if the city provides sewer service. So if the city were to provide sewer service in the North Highline annexation area, the city would forfeit approximately $7.75 million per year of revenue over the next 6 years, which would be very difficult for the city to do and still annex this area. So that is simply not on the table, and those utilities will continue to provide the services just as they have been doing. Fire service will be the same or will be improved. The city will continue to operate the North Highline Fire District's headquarters station, Station 18. By virtue of the law related to annexation, as the city annexes into this area, it acquires the assets of the fire district, and if it annexes into North Highline, it would acquire the headquarters Station 18. The station will be staffed 24/7 with an engine company consisting of 4 fire professionals, 1 more than the district currently staffs the engine company with. Response times for Engine 18 will be the same as they are currently from Station 18, but there will be more personnel. The city also has 3 fire stations in reasonable proximity to the North Highline annexation area that are available to provide service in the event of a major incident. And if you look at the board, which is up, it's a second from the left as I'm facing the board, so it would be on the board's right. There is a map showing these fire stations. You'll see that Station 18 is located approximately center left in the annexation area, just to the bottom of the annexation area. And you will see Seattle's fire stations, the three fire stations 37, 11, and 26 that are available to provide service in the North Highline area should that be needed. As our materials indicate, the response times from those fire stations are approximately a minute to a minute and a half longer than they are from Station 18. Seattle will also provide specialty fire services to the North Highline area that others cannot provide, including hazardous materials response team, a technical rescue response team, and a dive rescue response team that will all be available to provide service in this area. Now, we know that both Fire District 11 and Fire District 2 have submitted statements in opposition to the annexation, and I want to address those objections just briefly. I will address them again in rebuttal after after we hear what the districts do have to say. But first, I want to say that the City of Seattle recognizes that there is a response issue with respect to ALS services. As we pointed out in our response brief, if we were to provide ALS services from the current Fire Station 32, which is located at Southwest Alaska Street in West Seattle, the response time would be 14 minutes. And as everybody knows, that is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to the City of Seattle, and it's something which the City of Seattle will need to work on. There are a number of possible solutions to that. There are things that Seattle has looked at before, such as moving the medic unit from Station 32 further south towards the annexation. That's one possibility. There's the possibility of making the engine company a paramedic engine company, which Seattle has done at times in the past, the station paramedic on the engine. There's also the opportunity to look at mutual aid agreements or an agreement with South King County Medic Corps to allow them to respond automatically into the area. I can tell you that the Seattle Fire Department can and will solve this issue so that residents and businesses of North Highline will receive ALS services in a timely manner, commensurate with what Seattle's current residents and businesses receive. I'm sure the board can appreciate that Seattle is not going to annex an area and provide services to it which are very, very much less than what is provided in other areas of the city of Seattle. It can be done. But I do want to say that this is an operational issue for the fire department. It is an operational issue that the Seattle Fire Department can and will resolve. And it should not be grounds for denying this annexation. The Seattle Fire Department is very much a professional fire organization, as I think everyone would appreciate, and the Seattle Fire Department will in fact find a way to provide services to the community in the most efficient way possible. With respect to automatic aid, Seattle does believe that automatic aid is beneficial. Seattle is currently involved in discussions with federal agencies to formalize automatic aid agreements. There are a number of logistics to work out, as you would expect in something as large as that. And for those that may not know about automatic aid is a situation in which the closest fire unit responds to a fire call regardless of political boundaries. So if a call comes in, the closest unit goes without the need for anything to be called out from another jurisdiction. In contrast to that is mutual aid, where a jurisdiction has to actually request service from another agency to come in and help. But Seattle is looking at automatic aid agreements, but again, we believe that is an operational issue and not one that should be used to deny this annexation. As you can see, Seattle has not needed automatic aid in the past because it has fire stations which are close enough to provide service throughout the Seattle boundaries, and these three fire stations that the city has, 11, 37, and 26, when you couple that with North Highline Station 18, will be adequate to serve. Fire District 11 has also raised the issue of the timing of this annexation versus the timing of the Amish annexation, and as we pointed out in our response, Seattle's agreement with Fire District 11 will cover some of those possibilities, but the state RCW 35.02.190, ensures that all areas will get served regardless of the sequence in which annexations occur. Finally, Fire District 2 has raised concerns about their ability to serve Burien after the annexation, and as we pointed out in our response, the agreement under which Fire District 2 claims that King County and Seattle are obligated to provide it with land expired in 2012. And I think this agreement with the county is going to address that in their presentation. But Seattle does not have a responsibility to provide Fire District 2 with land. Seattle is willing to sit down with Fire District 2 to discuss how North Burien could be served after annexation, and there is currently a meeting scheduled for June the 29th, between which my understanding is that's the earliest the district had available to meet with the city to discuss those options, and Seattle intends to do that. Seattle is the only city that can bring unified governance and an urban level of service to the North Highline annexation area. As we mentioned in our opening brief in this matter and also in our response, other cities are not able to provide service to this area. If North Highline is going to receive urban services, if it is going to be served by a city and be within a city's boundaries, Seattle is where it will have to go, since Seattle is the only one who has North Highline in its potential annexation area at the present time. Burien can't do it. Burien came to you and asked for the ability to go to the voters to annex North Highline. Burien was given that opportunity. Voters overwhelmingly rejected that annexation, and Burien has now taken this area out of its potential annexation area. Not only is Seattle the only one with this area in its potential annexation area, but Seattle is the only city that has the financial opportunity to provide services to North Highline. North Highline needs urban services. To get those services, it has to be in the city. The county is simply not equipped to provide those services because it is a regional entity that is equipped to provide regional services. And the reason why Seattle is the only city that can financially do this is because the tax legislation, which the legislature passed in 2016, basically limits the tax incentive to this annexation. In order to qualify, the annexation had to be filed by January 1, 2015, and in order to qualify, that had to occur. Seattle is the only one with an annexation pending, and if this annexation does not go through, that tax incentive is gone, and there will be no revenue to provide for services. In closing, I would just say that tonight, the request of you is to allow the people to vote. We're not asking you to decide that the North Highline area come into the city of Seattle. The people get a chance to do that, and what we're asking you to do is to give them that opportunity. Thank you, and we're available for any questions.
Do any members have questions for the committee?
Good evening. I have two questions with regard to the fire service and the ALS. We discussed options. Does City of Seattle or the city itself have policy or guidelines on minimum thresholds for response time for ALS, or policy on equity and how it's served around the city?
I'm looking for Chief Bacon to see if these are out there.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Chief Jay Hagan. On behalf of Seattle's Fire Chief Harold Scoggins, thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. I do have just a few comments that I think will address your question. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So in 2015, the total number of advanced life support incidents that Seattle Fire responded to was 19,897, so just under 20,000. And of those advanced life support alarms, we transported 2,247 times. So about 11.3% of the time, Seattle Fire Department medic unit, of which there are 7, would transport a patient to the hospital. Regarding response times for the calendar year 2015, the average response time from time assigned to arriving at the scene was 6 minutes, 8 seconds. That includes call processing. So from en route to on scene, so that's from when they're in the unit, they turn the key, turn the motor on in the unit. That was just under 5 minutes at 4 minutes, 58 seconds, average response time. It's probably important to note that the secret recipe for success of the Medic One system is the layered nature of the response. So having the North Highline Engine 18, or if it was a Seattle engine, having the EMTs arrive first, perform an initial assessment, and prepare the way for the advanced life support unit, that's the recipe for success. It's also important to note that I think one of the reasons that the Seattle Fire Department medic units are so special is that our slowest medic unit is busier than the busiest King County medic unit. So we're able to, through repetition, saturate the skills. Some of the skills are very intricate and delicate and take a lot of practice. And so that's one of the things we're very proud of, is that the paramedics in the Seattle Fire Department have high repetition and low skill degradation. Does that address your question?
Yes, more or less. So then what occurs after annexation, should this area be annexed by Seattle, is the way you govern and distribute your services will remain equitable throughout Seattle.
As Jim mentioned, that's an operational concern. It's completely solvable, and we're looking at options right now on how best to tackle that problem should this area become part of Seattle.
Thank you. And then Jim, I have one more question for you. In order to come up with these options and solve this problem, what would be the timeline? I guess what I'm asking is from now until the vote and then the Seattle does this resolution and you have an official date for when now Seattle has to start providing service. What kind of time frame is there to solve this problem?
Well, I don't know that there's any specific time frame. Obviously, in this particular annexation, we're not looking for, going to vote this fall and annex and have the annexation occur at the end of this year. We're looking at, I believe the timeline is more 2019, is that correct, Ken? So we've got some time to solve the issue and to look at it. One of the things that Seattle Fire Department needs to do is to look at the revenues from this area and to look at all of its obligations and make some strategic decisions as to how we can move things around. But I think as Chief Hagan said, Seattle is committed to doing that and making this work. And Seattle does not allow some areas of the city to receive great service and other areas of the city not to. All of the areas of the city will receive good service.
Thank you.
Ms. Evans?
Mr. Haney, I want to make sure that I understood what you said. Earlier you said that assumption is not before us as part of this annexation. I understand that assumption is a separate process, but would you not agree that we have the obligation to look at fire service levels and response levels under our factors and criteria?
Yes, I believe that you do have the obligation to look at fire service and at whether or not a jurisdiction can provide adequate fire service. We believe we can provide that. We believe we've shown we can provide that. What I'm saying is that there are certain operational issues about how you do that I'm not sure need to be solved at the moment. The city of Seattle can tell you, as you look at the way in which the city provides fire services currently, we can tell you what the city's standards are. The city's standards with respect to response times for an engine company are NFPA standards. Those are nationwide standards, and the city is providing response times in the area of between 4 and 4.5 minutes. Chief Hagan just told you that the city's standard or average response time currently for medic services is about 6 minutes. And so those are the standards that we'll be working towards. How we exactly solve those, I'm not sure we need to do at this point. But you need to have, I agree, you need to have assurances that the city can indeed provide those, and it provides that throughout the city.
Would it be possible for you, either tonight or tomorrow in the rebuttal, to tell us some ways you might possibly solve them? I.e., would you be looking to locate another station? Would you be doing mutual aid agreements? Do you traditionally do mutual aid agreements?
I can certainly address those. I can tell you now that the city of Seattle, as I said, with respect to ALS services, with respect to the basic life support services, we're going to provide those through Station 18 because we will take over Station 18 as part of the annexation. So basic life support would be 4 to 4.5 minutes. It will meet the city standards. Advanced life support, as I've told you, there are a number of options on the table. There are options like moving the medic service unit from its current location at Station 32 slightly south, but you need to obviously balance that with what it provides the areas it's serving in the northern part of West Seattle. There are options of contracting with South County medic unit to allow to have them respond, and we would be able to work a mutual agreement on that. The city has, as I've said in the past, had the idea of a paramedic, deployed the idea of a paramedic fire engine, where one of the 3 firefighters on the engine is actually a paramedic and has the ability to provide those ALS services immediately. So those are all options that are being considered, but at this point, no particular option has been decided upon. But the city is very confident that from those options, the city will be able to provide service at the level that Seattle is currently providing.
Mr. McCready?
I have 2 questions as well. Sticking with the fire, I have a question about the automatic,
Yeah.
excuse me. You had stated that, I'm going to take a drink of water here. You had stated that you're negotiating with other districts to provide automatic aid. Is there's other districts, other jurisdictions besides the city of, or I guess it's the Fire District 2, other districts besides Fire District 2 that you're negotiating? First of all, and the second part of that question is this a change of policy for the city?
Let me call Chief Hagan up if I could, and have him do that, since he's been the one who was involved in those discussions, and he can tell you what is currently happening.
Thank you. In King County, all the fire departments in King County are divided into 3 zones. Zone 1 is the east and north suburbs. Zone 3 is the south and southwest suburbs, and then the city of Seattle is geographic zone 5. Currently in zone 3, there are automatic aid arrangements happening right now today. They have formed a training consortium where they share training expenses and opportunities, and they actually have quite a bit of success with that. And they also respond in an automatic aid basis, which, as we said earlier, is closest unit goes, regardless of political boundary. So that's actually happening, I think, pretty well in zone 3. In zone 1, it's happening a little bit, and in Seattle, we're not quite there yet. We do have mutual aid agreements. For example, we routinely send a Seattle medic unit north into Shoreline to cover their need, and they do the same for us. We also send one of the ladder trucks from Northgate up to Shoreline. But the mutual aid is a written agreement that everybody agrees to in advance, but we still have to pick up the phone and call after that.
So this, the negotiation for the on-night is countywide, basically. With Seattle, it's not just the one district, it's changing
Sure,
policy.
it's both. It's both. It's an effort that's happening countywide. And for example, we've learned from other regions of the country, the Los Angeles area, the National Capital Region, Chicago area, that these automatic aid arrangements can be very fruitful and very rewarding for all of the agencies involved. And we're just a little bit behind the curve on that. But it is a goal of ours to pursue those, not just in this instance, but countywide.
Another question too, and it doesn't involve financing. You had listed many services that Seattle will be providing in the area, and particularly the social services. And actually, this may be a question for King County, not you. I just wanted to know, do you know what services that the city will be providing that are not offered by King County?
Well, I'll let Ms. Freeman talk about that, but I can tell you right now that my understanding is that King County has very little in the way of human services that it provides in this particular area, and that the city of Seattle, particularly the business services that Seattle will provide, the early education services that Seattle will provide, those are services that King County is simply not set up to provide at this point.
During their testimony, I could list out which ones are not provided.
Back to fire. Who currently provides ALS services to the annexation area?
I believe that's South County Medic Corps.
And do you know what that current response time is to the annexation area?
I do not know, although I do know that the medic unit very recently moved to downtown Burien. So it is located in downtown Burien now.
Would it be possible, perhaps for rebuttal, to get that current response time to the annexation area, if that's a statistic that's actually available?
If it's available, we'll definitely get that for you.
Thank you.
I have a question on police response times. So the station for Southwest Precinct at 20 and Southwest Webster is the location that dispatching will occur. With the annexation and the Highline and the precinct and sector beat map, once that's revised, do you have any indication of what the effect on response times will be? They will be within, according to the NOI, the established standards for priority 1, 2, 3, and 4 calls, but just wondering what the differences would be between current dispatch time and
I do not have that, but we'll make sure that we get that for you. What I can tell you is that my understanding is that there are currently 2 King County Sheriff's deputies on duty who patrol this area. We are proposing to have a squad of 6 at a minimum, with a 6-member backup and 2 sergeants on duty. That's the minimum shift in first watch, and that rises to 8 officers, an 8-member squad, and an 8-member backup, surge squad, I guess they call it, with 2 sergeants during second shift or second watch. So there's going to be a lot more police officers out there, and they will be patrolling. Plus, you have the community police officer who is out there going around all the time, checking on things, checking trouble areas and so forth. And you have the anti-crime team officer who is also in the area. So we're planning on putting a lot more police on the streets to serve this area than are currently out there now. And I take that back. Actually, King County, I believe, has 2 officers, 2 sheriff's deputies out there now, and maybe there's also an officer at the storefront, which is, there is a storefront where the King County Sheriff's Department maintains a storefront in the White Center. And so we'll have a lot more officers than that on duty and on active patrol.
Any more questions from the board?
Chair, will we have a chance to talk about the fees with water and sewer districts at some point, or should we ask our questions now?
Water and sewer districts.
I could wait till the water and sewer districts does it.
I'm happy to answer a question about if it relates to the city of Seattle. Yeah.
And I don't have it right here in front of me, but I have some. I think there was information that the sewer and water fees would go up exponentially under the assumption by the city of Seattle. And I believe I read somewhere, and maybe one of the other board members can help me find this, where it might be 2 to 3 times what it is now. And I was wondering if there was some explanation for that. I wanted to see if I can find it while you're answering.
Well, I think where you saw it was in the water, I believe, in the water and sewer district letters, there was some indication of that. But again, assumption is not proposed at the present time, so we haven't addressed rates. I can tell you that with respect to the utility rates in the area, the water and sewer districts will continue to serve their customers in the area. We are not proposing assumption at this point. The rate should stay the same, with one small exception, and that is that the city of Seattle, to all utilities that operate within the city's limits, the city does charge a franchise fee for those utilities, but that franchise fee only recoups the city's costs of actually administering the franchise system. And so it is, pennies on the dollar. It's very little, it's a very small one. So you will not see the types of utility fee growth that the water and sewer districts say, because we're not proposing assumption. And again, the sewer, it would be suicidal for the city of Seattle to assume the sewer because of the tax issue.
And that's with the caveat of a 6-year time frame. Beyond that, other things, assumption may happen.
Yes, and if it is proposed at that time, of course, it has to come back to this board.
Right.
And all of those questions about rates and costs and all of that stuff are absolutely fair game, and that's not being proposed now.
And how about utilities like Comcast and CenturyLink? Does the city have a surcharge on those that is different than what the county has?
I do not know off the top of my head. What I can tell you is that the city is not in the business of providing those services, so the city is not going to be providing those services. There would, in the same instance, be a franchise fee. I can tell you that with respect to cable television, that the federal act which governs cable television limits the amount of the fee that you can charge. It is 5% of the gross revenues. Virtually everybody who has cable television within their jurisdictions charges that same fee, but that's a matter of federal law. It is cut off at that.
And it's true for cities and counties.
That is correct, and I can tell you as well that at least for cities, there is a limit on the amount of utility tax that you may impose on telephone and providers as well.
And then one last question. On all of these utility fees, sewer, water, franchises, all of them, are those fees earmarked to go back to the use of the utility or the franchise, or can they be turned over to other parts of the general, call it the general fund?
Okay. Utility fees that are charged by utilities go directly to the utility. If you think about utilities, they are actually treated as separate entities under state law from the city in a sense. They're a separate enterprise fund is what it's called in state law.
That's the word I want.
Yes, it's a separate enterprise fund is what it's called in the state law. And A utility that charges its utility fees, those fees go back directly to the utility, and the utility uses those to provide utility service. Now, a city that charges a franchise fee to a utility is essentially charging the utility for the privilege of operating a money-making utility business within the city limits. Those franchise fees that jurisdictions charge go into the general fund. They are not limited to the utility, because the management of the franchise comes out of the general fund, and therefore the fees go there.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Little?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify a little bit. From notice of intention, it was pretty clear to me that it was the intent of Seattle to annex the water and sewer districts. I understand the legislation about the sewer districts postpone it, but is it the policy of the city council to serve water and sewer within the city limits or something like that?
Well, ultimately, yes, that is the city's policy. The city does provide water and sewer service throughout its city limits. But again, assumption is a separate process, and it's not part of the process.
Well, I understand that, but also you can't assume it if you don't annex it first.
No, well, yes,
So
you're correct.
It's a two-step process. If you don't annex the area, then you wouldn't be able to annex, take over the water and sewer districts.
Yes,
outside the city.
there are some circumstances in which a city can, if part of a water district or sewer district is located inside the city,
Right.
assume the entire district, but you're basically correct.
I've been out of business for about 5 years now, so I'm not really up to date with the current. But I think it was Water District 20's statements here kind of describe, there's a new process in 3513A, I think, right?
That's correct.
And so how would that impact the city if the annexation did succeed, but in 5 or 6 years when we decide to do something, how would the current statutes apply if the city decided to assume one of the water districts?
Well, if the city decided to assume, of course, the statutes that were in effect at that time would apply. But the way that the current statute is worded and the major change that occurred is that the statute now says that upon assumption of a water and sewer district, first of all, the city would have to pass an ordinance to assume. It would have to file a notice of intent with this board. This board would have to approve the assumption. The city would then pass the assumption, and then there would be a referendum process which is available to voters within the water or sewer district that is being assumed, whereby they could ask for a public vote on the assumption, and if they voted against assumption, the assumption would not occur. So that is what is new in the
Okay,
statute.
and so is that is that over the entire water district, or is that just the portion of the water district that's within the city limits?
I believe that is, I believe that it is, if you're assuming the entire water district, it would be the entire water district.
Right.
If you're assuming only a portion, I believe that only that portion
We'll-
is
we'll-
the
we'll-
vote.
I'm sure we'll be able to ask the water districts.
Yes, and I can certainly look at that as well, and
Okay.
provide additional information.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mr. James.
Thank you very much for your attention, and thanks to all the people here for being here. I know it's those of us who get paid to be here to stand before you. I know we appreciate all the people who aren't getting paid and who have the opportunity to come out and talk. And Seattle is very willing to listen to all of the folks here. We appreciate your attention. Thank you.
King County, Karen Freeman, please.
Thank you. My name is Karen Freeman, and I'm here on behalf of King County. I'm a senior policy analyst and project manager in the regional planning and government relations sections of the executive's office. King County appreciates the city of Seattle moving forward with a notice of intent to annex North Highline Area Y, and we appreciate the board's consideration this evening. The King County region has been advancing smart growth since the Growth Management Act was passed, and King County government has developed and implemented land use policies that support resilient, healthy, diverse, and sustainable communities. This policy development has included an ongoing conversation with our city partners that has taken place over the last decade as cities claim the unincorporated parts of the county that have become urban and therefore need to move into neighboring cities as envisioned by GMA so they can receive the urban level services they need. This is because counties were designed to provide regional and rural services, and cities were designed to provide local services to dense urban populations. That's the key issue here for King County. Carefully transitioning our last remaining urban islands into the cities that have claimed these areas so that the citizens in these areas get the urban level services that they desperately need. This entire project was envisioned to close in 2012, and we are way beyond that date, and I think everyone in the room probably feels the pain of that. I've been working on the North Highline annexation since 2007, though many of you and others in the room have been working on this issue much longer. Folks will recall that North Highline is the only urban island in King County that was claimed by more than one city as a potential annexation area. The cities of Burien, SeaTac, Seattle, and Tukwila all claim parts of North Highline as their PAA, thus creating overlapping designations. This has never happened before, nor since, and in fact cannot happen again because the countywide planning policies, which were created in partnership with the cities in King County, now prohibit overlapping designations. A quick history, in 2008, the city of SeaTac removed North Highline from their comp plan. Then, through mediated discussions that began in 2008, the remaining cities developed a governance transition framework around the realization that North Highline was too big an urban island for any one city to annex. So the agreement created a path forward with annexation attempts by cities in a coordinated way. Burien annexed the southern portion of North Highline, known as Area X, in April of 2010, moving over 14,000 people into their city. They then attempted to annex the northern portion of North Highline, but nearly 65% of the folks that voted on that proposal voted no. The city of Burien then chose to remove the area-wide PAA from their comp plan, and as a result, are no longer eligible to annex Area Y. In 2012 and 2013, Tukwila worked on an attempt to annex Area Q, also known as the Triangle, and that proposal was not approved by the BRB. Next, the city of Seattle received approval from the BRB in 2015 to move forward with an annexation attempt of the Duwamish annexation, which consists of the Triangle, also known as Area Q, and the Sliver. And the county and the city are working on an interlocal agreement to facilitate that governance transfer, and the city is hoping for a November 2016 ballot measure. Now Seattle is here before the board with a notice of intent to annex Area Y. Something very important to highlight is that the status quo
Can I ask you to slow down a little bit, please?
Yes, sorry. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry about that. The status quo, current levels of service provided by the county are not adequate and not sustainable. This is a key issue. Cities and counties have very different taxing authorities that are, in general, appropriate for the level of service they provide. The mix of county funding sources are limited. As a result, county funding is not enough to support urban level areas like North Highline. We don't generate enough revenue to support urban level services that communities like North Highline desperately need. Cities do have the right mix of funding sources, and they do generate enough revenue to support urban level services, like the services that North Highline needs. In addition, Seattle will receive revenues from the state sales tax credit to incentivize annexation tool, and it's important, and those services, that money will flow to services only in the annexation area. It's important to note these funds have now sunset, are no longer available to any other city in the future, making Seattle's proposal very time sensitive. A current look at county service levels in contrast to Seattle's proposed service levels highlights the difference between what a county can provide and what a city can provide. And this goes to the question that you asked, Mr. McCready. Just to consider a couple of these kinds of services, consider our roads department, which exists, which we actually require about $350 million in annual funding in order to maintain our road service, but we only have access to $100 million annually. So this limits our work to immediate safety issues, clean water requirements required by law, and a very modest amount of maintenance and preservation. At this level of funding, infrastructure continues to deteriorate. We've reduced our staff by 45% and are only able to plow 15% of the roads during snow events. We're struggling. We don't have the funding necessary to keep up with urban level service needs. Seattle, by contrast, has a healthy transportation budget funded by a $930 million levy. Consider police services. The King County Sheriff's Office currently staffs North Highline with 2 deputies on the street and a storefront deputy. The City of Seattle is proposing 3 shifts with a minimum of 6 officers and 2 sergeants. Some of those shifts will have as many as 8 officers, as well as a community police team officer and an anti-crime team officer, all dedicated to North Highline. For human services, King County spends $20,000 annually on local human services in North Highline to help fund the local food bank. That is it. The City of Seattle Human Services Department provides $89 million in annual funding through 450 contracts to nearly 200 agencies that support Seattle's most vulnerable residents each year in a city of 600,000 residents. The King County does provide some regional human services, and I provided an exhibit to Angelica to distribute, and those are here. We provide these services through a regional levy to King County's 2 million residents.
Excuse me, Karen, that's exhibit B on your table.
Thank you. Mr. Haney mentioned economic development. They have an entire department and team that do that. We have 1 FTE that works on regional economic development, and that's mostly focused on large sector services. For community planning, again, the City of Seattle has an entire department that does this. We have 1 FTE that works on community planning for all of King County. As you can see, the levels of service provided by the City of Seattle are far superior to what the county provides currently or could ever provide, because we were never designed to provide urban level services. That's a city's job. And the City of Seattle is uniquely qualified to provide urban level services to North Highline due to the size of the city and the application of the sales tax credit to fund services in the annexation area, which they grandfathered themselves into. I just wanted to mention briefly the MOU transition framework that, to clarify a couple points that Fire District 2 made in their memo to the board. The district stated that the transition framework document was a standalone document with no sunset date, and with all due respect to the district, that's not the case. I staffed these documents for the executive when they were created in 2008. They were part of a package. The transition framework was an attachment to the memorandum of understanding document. Both documents have the same date noted on them at the bottom. And in fact, item 5, page 1 of the MOU states that the transition framework is an attachment. The package of documents, which included the MOU and the transition framework, were effective until January 1st of 2012, and the MOU stated that in its final item, number 10, page 2. In the 4 years since the package of documents expired, no one from any jurisdiction has brought this issue up to me or to any of my other colleagues at the county. The county has repeatedly encouraged all service jurisdictions to plan for their eventual future state of annexation into a city or cities, and to plan for all various potential outcomes, of which there were many because of the overlapping designations. In addition, North Highland annexations of various forms have been before the board on 3 separate occasions over the last 6 years, and we've all been here with the board talking about what's coming next on those 3 occasions. In addition, we've sat in a room together through many mediated discussions that have taken place. The county is facing a projected $50 million budget shortfall in our 2016-2017 budget, and so we regrettably do not have land or dollars to offer, but we do stand ready to participate in conversations to find creative solutions to all the issues that arise from the North Highline annexation. In closing, the county fully supports realizing the vision of GMA in which residents in urban areas receive the urban level services they need. Seattle's proposal realizes that important vision for North Highline, and King County is fully supportive of placing this issue before the voters for their consideration. We thank the board for your consideration of this proposal and can entertain any questions.
Any questions from board members? Mr. McCready?
Going back to the services that the county can't provide, is it possible to get a list of those? Just to, a list that, I mean, you claim that they're not going to be able to provide them, so I'd just like to have a list of what services you can't provide and that the city will.
Yeah, I can do that for you.
Ms. Evans?
Just out of curiosity, Mr. Mayor, there's some wonderful King County housing projects in this area.
Yeah.
What will happen to those after annexation?
So the King County Housing Authority is a separate governmental entity that's not related to King County government. We do have our own small housing division within our Community and Human Services Department, but most of that work is shepherding federal pass-through dollars to projects in King County. So King County Housing Authority operates separately, and their projects will continue to move forward.
On the transition framework, can you give some background on thinking regarding the land for a new fire station in North Green? What was the, because I realized the expiration in 2012 was a new assessment, but what was the thinking in 2008?
So I think that, we were highlighting issues that were presenting themselves, that were challenges that we needed to work together to solve. My chief of staff at the time said, hey, by 2012, the King County-wide planning policies envisioned that all of these annexations would be completed by 2012. At the time, we had 12 large urban islands. We've worked with the board. We now have 5 urban islands, so we're more than halfway there, but we did not complete that exercise. And his thought at the time was, in 2012, I'll be done with this. These areas that draw more revenue than they're able to generate, that will give me a little bit of leverage in my budget, and I might be able to do something to help move this annexation forward to meet that 2012 deadline. But we did not complete all of our annexations, and in fact, the agreement expired, and here we are.
Just to make sure I'm clear, from the perspective of 2008, it was anticipated there would be the funding from completion of annexations to allow for the purchase of the land. And,
At the time, he was thinking, I'll be done with all my annexations, so these large urban islands that are drawing more revenues than they generate, I might have a little flexibility with my budget to help the fire district purchase a piece of land, if that will help move the issue forward in a timely way. That was the key, and it did not move forward in a timely way.
Any questions from the board? Any further questions? Thank you, Ms. Freeman.
Thank you.
The board is going to have a 5-minute break.
And we'll follow with Brian Singer and Joe Quinn.
Before we take a break, can I ask a quick question? It's unclear from this agenda whether we only have a room till 9 this evening. No. Okay, because I wanted to make sure we had talked about if there are people here who need to
I will bring that up.
Okay.
We'll reconvene at 8:25. A handful of seats that have freed up here in front that you might be able to move into. Or if you'd like, there's actually, you want to move a chair into a closer location, feel free. There is a little bit of space here.
As I mentioned before the break, we are about to hear from Brian Snur and then Joe Quinn, and then we will move to public testimony. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that before we get started on it. Brian?
Thank you. My name is Brian Snur. I'm General Legal Counsel for North Highline Fire District. My address is 612 South 227th Street, Des Moines, Washington, 98198. With me this evening are Commissioner Liz Giva, who is here, and Commissioner Dominic Herrera, is sitting right back there. Honorable board members, North Highline Fire District is opposed to this annexation until such time as the City of Seattle provides a detailed and comprehensive plan for how it will provide fire protection and emergency medical services to the North Highline area and how it will address the impacts in North Burien. Another way to say this perhaps is we think that this board has an obligation to consider what the city has called the operational issues. And if the city hasn't resolved the operational issues before it is asking this board to approve the annexation, then the annexation should be denied. And I think that is required if we look at your factors and objectives, as I will in a few minutes. So we have submitted a written statement. I hope you all received it in advance. I'm not going to read the written statement to you, but I am available to answer questions. You have them, and this talk will be supplemental. As we all know, we've been here many times talking about annexations in North Highline. If this annexation is approved by the board and approved by the voters, North Highline Fire District will cease to exist for all practical purposes. There could be a little area sliver by the river in Delta Marine if that's not approved, and that's addressed in my written materials. But for purposes of this discussion, we can assume that if the annexation is approved, North Highline Fire District will cease to exist. So that might lead some of you to wonder, so why does North Highline Fire District care? If it goes away, Seattle's got a great fire department, they've got the capacity to provide services, why would North Highline Fire District oppose this when the last 4 or 5 times we've been before you, all we've asked for is to just have somebody take the whole thing and stop the piecemeal annexations? The reason is the Board of Fire Commissioners cares about what its obligation is to its citizens. Board of Fire Commissioners has a single purpose. It's a great thing about being a commissioner of a fire district. Your single purpose is to look out for fire protection and emergency medical services for the citizens you serve. And at the present time, they don't have the answers that they need to be able to support this annexation. We don't question the fact that the City of Seattle has the operational capacity to provide the service to this area, to even improve the services in this area. But based on the evidence that's been presented to the board so far, based on the evidence that we're aware of, there is no guarantee that Seattle has the political will or ability to provide its fire department with the resources necessary to provide the services, particularly the ALS services. There's also a significant issue involving North Burien. Mr. Quinn will be speaking about that, so I'm not going to talk about it a lot. And simply point out that North Burien used to be part of North Highline Fire District, and it is a significant impact that our board is also concerned about because we currently provide those services through a contract. And if we disappear, we won't be there to fulfill that obligation. The city filed this notice of intention almost a year ago, or a little over a year ago. It wasn't until May of this year, when we were notified by the BRB board that we were having this hearing, that we reached out to the City of Seattle and asked them for their plan to provide services. There was no communication from the city prior to that time. In response to our question, the city did come and meet with the Board of Commissioners. The city responded to a laundry list of questions, which we appreciate because there were a lot of questions, and we got the responses. The challenge with the responses is a lot of them, I think, fall into this category the city mentioned about these are operational issues. You know, trust us, we'll take care of the operational issues when the time is right. Well, we think that the time is right now when they have to be answered. And we'd ask this board, we don't believe that you can approve the annexation simply based on the general statements or the unilateral promises of Seattle to do what's right for North Highline. They've had plenty of time to plan this annexation. They should be coming forward with specific concrete proposals, agreements that would address the ALS issue, agreements that would address the North Iberian issue. And absent those agreements, we think the annexation needs to be denied. Your factors and objectives support this approach. 3693-170 requires that the board consider as a factor of the annexation the existence of applicable service agreements. What that really means is service agreements, what they deal with is they deal with the operational issues. If the city was here with a proposed agreement that would enter into automatic aid with District 2 or with King County Medic 1 to address the ALS issue, we would have nothing to oppose because then our response times would be managed. The written materials, we did answer the question about the response time currently for ALS, and it's average of 6 minutes. So the city's going to provide ALS under the current plan with the evidence you have from Station 32, which I noted isn't even reflected on the map. So that's how far away it is. And they recognize that it's a problem. And we appreciate that. Our position is until they have a concrete solution, the annexation's not ready to move forward. Maybe they need another year. Maybe they need to come back with an actual plan. And we're not just kind of crying wolf. We've all been here talking about North Island annexations for a long time. The 2008 MOU, which has been discussed, and the annexation framework, which has been discussed. Under those documents, Seattle agreed to work together to develop service agreements. The annexation framework provided that the City of Seattle would work collaboratively with North Highline to optimize response times through reciprocal service arrangements in areas of need. Those documents were entered into 8 years ago. Yet I'm standing here right now, 8 years later, when they finally start pushing the annexation forward again. We don't have those collaborative agreements. We don't have those service agreements that would address the operational issues that truly trouble the board. So this is a significant factor in this annexation that we're required to consider, and the absence of any service agreements is a critical issue and does not support approving the annexation. The other factors that we ask you to consider relate to the need for municipal services in this area, the cost and adequacy of municipal services in this area, and how that will change if Seattle annexes it. This is a significant boundary change. The current service areas in North Highline have been developed over decades of political boundaries historically created, and the fact that while Seattle's been a great mutual aid partner with surrounding regions for large events, Seattle has been, as I think was mentioned here, they're not a reliable automatic aid partner in providing services. You can't rely on Seattle under the present situation for day-to-day automatic aid. Zone 3, as Chief Hagan mentioned, fire departments operate without regard to political boundaries. Closest unit will respond regardless of political boundaries. That hasn't existed in Seattle, and so the service area in North Highline has been developed between North Highline and King County Fire Protection District 2 that recognizes that reality. That's why North Highline provides services to North Iberian because it's got the closest station and had developed those agreements. So urban level services, highly intensive urban area, the current fire districts are already providing them. If Seattle comes in, well, they have the capability to provide it. Unless they move into the current age of automatic aid agreements, they're not going to be able to maintain the level of services, particularly in ALS. And that brings us to the statutory objective of creating or preserving logical service areas. This annexation will certainly not preserve a logical service area. The logical service area is what I just described. District 2, North Highline, over decades of working together and watching their various departments grow and shrink due to annexation, have developed an efficient and logical service area. If this line is redrawn to move the City of Seattle north to the or south to the boundary, that changes significantly how this service area works. And so it won't preserve a logical service area, it will destroy one. Then the question is, will it also create one? And the only way it will create one is if the City of Seattle comes before you and says, we have worked out specific concrete proposals, we have plans, we have agreements that will allow us to provide a 6-minute or better ALS service in this area. and that will allow us to maximize through automatic aid, mutual aid, other agreements, fire protection services in this area. Absent those agreements, absent that specific plan, we don't believe the annexation meets the criteria or will meet the logical service area objective of the Boundary Review Board. And on that basis, we are respectfully requesting that you deny the annexation. Thank you.
Question from the board?
Yes, I had a question. I couldn't tell on the map exactly where Fire District 2 is. Is any portion of Fire District 2 within the annexation area?
No, Fire District 2 is the green area. City of Berien's annexed into Fire District 2.
Okay.
So it's the green area in that middle map there, and it runs all the way down to the park.
There's city boundary then.
Yes.
Fire District 2.
Yeah, I think it covers portions of unincorporated King County too, I believe.
And then through contract, you actually have a contract then to provide certain services?
Yes, following the annexation of the North Berrien area by Berrien, which was previously in North Highline, King County Fire District number 2 and North Highline negotiated an agreement because we have the Station 18 there. It was still ours. We transferred ownership of Station 19, although we still operate Station 19 as North Highland Fire District. And Berrien pays us some of the lost revenues from that area, and then we provide the services. The districts have a joint chief as well, which they get to address some of these issues.
Insertion?
Yes, Mr. Spear, can you please clarify the statistic on the 6-minute response time for ALS? 2 points. From what station is ALS provided and to what geographic area covers the 6 minutes?
I will do my best, keeping in mind that I'm a lawyer, not a fire chief, and my fire chief isn't here this evening.
There will be a chance
It's-
tomorrow if you'd like to respond.
That would be fine. Do you know the station, the GK knows the station, 28?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The station that the medic units set parked at in Berrien.
King County, South King County Medic Unit number 4. South King County Medic Unit number 4 just recently moved to downtown Berrien, and its response time into the annexation area is excellent.
So that 6 minutes extends into this North Highland.
Clearly, yes.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Mr. Schnur, would you give us your opinion about that transitional framework and in response to the elapsed time?
My opinion is, my opinion on behalf of North Highland Fire District is that it was designed to address the exact issues that we're talking about here tonight, that we would have service agreements in place so that when annexation came before the Boundary Review Board and went before the voters, we wouldn't have unanswered questions. So whether it's a legally binding agreement, I'll defer to Mr. Quinn, if he spent more time looking at that. Whether the spirit of those agreements should continue on and should have been fulfilled, I would say that they haven't been fulfilled.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Sir.
Thank you.
Joe Quinn.
Thank you. My name is Joseph Quinn. I'm the attorney for District 2. As you've heard, Fire District 2 is serving the cities of Berrien and Normandy Park. And my address is 20 Forest Glen Lane Southwest. That's in Lakewood. But I'm district secretary and attorney for Berrien since about 1988. And so I'm familiar with the issues factually and the history of the relationship between the two fire departments. I would start with the objectives. That's the end. I always start from the end and work back to the beginning. The Boundary Review Board here has to attain the preservation of logical surface areas under 4693-180, and I think that's the lodestar by which you need to operate. And we keep coming back to that. And I don't think we can say that some issues are merely operational. ALS service is an important service. In fact, it's a life or death service. When the dispatcher dispatches chest pain to an address, that means that's an ALS call automatically. That's probably a heart attack. So it's going to be an ALS call. You want, in the case of a heart attack, as fast a response time as you can get. Seattle has said candidly and honestly, it's 14 minutes from the station that they now have. So they need to do something about that clearly. They need to have a plan. Your job, as I see it, and I think as you see it, is to apply the factors and objectives, but you're being asked to decide something now, not later. And then the voters will be asked to decide something if it gets approved. And they'll be asked to decide now, not later, at the time of the vote. How can a boundary board member or a voter vote intelligently on the issues that are assigned by law to vote on or to decide upon if you don't have the information? If you're told, well, the information will be provided, we're considering several options for that. It's not merely operational, it's the service that we're talking about. And that service, in this case, I want to focus on one service. I know we're special purpose districts, but that's what we do in the fire service, is we provide fire and EMS. And so when I look at this, I look at ALS service, and I think we need answers as part of this proceeding. So when I look at that, I look at factors. Applicable service agreements under 3934 RCW. We have an applicable service agreement between North Highline Fire and District 2 that's been in existence for years. And what that does for Burien Fire, for my client, is it provides service from Station 18. Station 18 will be gone. It will be an asset owned by the city of Seattle because, as Brian said, the fire district is dissolved if all of its territory. In fact, more than 60% of its territory is taken in an annexation. Then the district is dissolved and its assets are given and provided to the new provider. That's the way it works. So Station 18 will be gone. Right now, Station 18 is our primary response station for North Burien. That's why when the parties met in 2008, the five-party talks were successful and they were important. They provided for an orderly transition to anticipate that maybe part of this would go to Seattle and part would go to Burien, but we need to work these things out so that we have an orderly transition. That means things are done in order, I guess you could say. And the things, you don't put the cart before the horse. You get the plan in place, or you at least say you have a plan and you talk about it among each other and get it done. And that's what they did. The need for the North Burien station was acknowledged by all in those five-party talks, and that's why King County, under certain circumstances, agreed that it would provide land. Land only, not a building. We'd still have to build a fire station, which, as we've learned from recent experience in Burien, is an expensive proposition. All my clients that are building fire stations all over western Washington are finding that that can cost you $8 to $10 million to build the station, but it sure would be nice to get the land. We paid in an amicable transaction over $1 million to get the station that is now Station 28, which, by the way, is at 146th Street. And the response time from there for King County Medic 1, which is now our tenant, we just have a lease started June 1st. The response time into this area, that's the annexation area, would be less than 6 minutes. It would be more like 4 minutes. It's brand new, so we can't test that presumption. That station was at SeaTac. I mean, that King County Medic 1 unit was in the city of SeaTac until recently and wanted to get out of there apparently and get to a better location. We were able to make that happen through months of negotiation. So now they're there. ALS service is there. Could we have an automatic aid agreement between King County Medic 1 and Seattle? That'd be great. We wouldn't be a party to it. We're only a fire district. We provide BLS service. But let's look back at this agreement. It was great. It was fair to all concerned. If now it can be just ignored or disavowed under the rather lame, I would call it, excuse that, oh, it expired. That's like saying, well, that was an issue then. That was a good idea then, but it's not a good idea now. Well, why is it not a good idea now? The same circumstances are presented. We still need a northern station. We still don't have one. What's happened here is that Burien Incorporated, not that many years ago in my memory, but Burien Incorporated, and that hurt North Highline Fire. it would have hurt them greatly. But what we decided was the tax money collected in that part of Burien that was in North Highline Fire District would be turned over to them, and we'd work out a reciprocal service agreement. We give them the tax money in North Burien. We pay them the tax money that's collected in North Burien so that they can service from Station 18. If Seattle would say tonight, automatic aid would be great, we'll serve you from Station 18, this would be a lot different picture. But they're not saying that because they really can't at this point. So I look at it as if Seattle and King County reneged on the 5-party talks. Nothing's really changed. Why should we not profit? Why should we suffer from the delay? Burien Fire and North Highline Fire didn't cause the delay. Why should we suffer from the fact that it took longer for the process to take place? That's just government. It's normal. So the remedy, as Brian said, is do not approve this annexation until you're satisfied, until Seattle shows you that there is preservation of the logical service area now provided to the North Burien residents and taxpayers. We're left with no North Burien station, no Station 18. We have Station 19, as Brian said. They deeded that to my client, and in return, we leased it back for $1 a year so they can continue to use it. We work cooperatively together. Not only do we share a fire chief, but we share battalion chiefs across those lines. Automatic aid is a great thing, by the way. In Pierce County, where I work extensively, and South King County, where both Brian and I work extensively, automatic aid is common. It's common around the country. If you look at Phoenix, if you look at San Francisco, all the major cities, automatic aid with their neighbors is done everywhere. I don't know why it's not really done in Seattle. So candidly admit it isn't done much. But it's big in Zone 3, Southern King County. It's come a long way in Zone 1. It's huge in Pierce County. We do it all the time. Between Tacoma and South King Fire, across the county boundary, we serve I-5. We serve the northbound lanes from Tacoma. They serve the southbound lanes from Federal Way, South King Fire District, which is my client. And so automatic aid is done all the time. It's simply this. We change the run cards. We change the CAD on the computer to say, if you call 911 from this address, you're going to get service from them over there. Puyallup and my clients in Pierce County have been doing that for 20 years. It's not rocket science. It's done all the time in various parts of the country, and it would solve the problem here. But there are no negotiations. They mentioned June 29th. That's great. They agreed to meet and talk. There's no negotiations for an automatic aid agreement that are ongoing right now. So, as I see it, we just need more information. We need more commitment. We don't need promises. We need commitment from the parties that they will work together and then follow through on that. We're willing to work with them. They need to be willing to work with us. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions from the board? Mr. McCready?
I have a question. Could the MOU that expired in 2012 have been extended? And did you pursue that?
I don't think anybody pursued it. Annexation just sort of languished in terms of the final total annexation. There were things going on, as Mr. Schnur said, like the sliver by the river, the Delta Marine, the efforts by Tukwila. Those are marginal. What really matters to us is if King County District 11 goes away, if it gets dissolved and goes away, that has an impact on Burien Fire. All those little things really didn't. So no, nobody tried to extend it. Seattle never came to us and said, we're still willing. King County never did either.
Mr. Coleman. Mr. Quinn, could you just take a minute to describe the status of Station 19? It's come up in a couple of different issue or ways, but just take a minute and let us know who owns it, who operates it, and what will happen.
What happened when the 2010 annexation of what I refer to as North Burien now, when that annexation of Area X, I guess it was, happened in 2010, there was the city of Burien acquired that land, and since the city of Burien is annexed by law into Fire District 2, my client, it was decided that there should be an asset transfer, just like when any city annexes a large portion of a fire district. So the asset transfer that would take place would not be to the city of Burien. They certainly weren't entitled to get it. My client was entitled to get it. So what we did was, we stood in the shoes of the city, so we said, we would like to have an asset transfer, but we don't expect you to come up with cash. And so, because that would have had, again, another impact on North Highline, which we didn't want to hurt them. So we said, if you simply give us a fee simple interest title to Station 19, we'll lease it back to you for a year, let you use it just as if you owned it, and we'll have that asset on our books so that the asset transfer was taken care of by law. So it was more or less to take care of the asset transfer statutes than anything else. They owed us about, see if I can remember, over $1 million in that asset transfer, and we took Station 19 as part of that transfer.
So then, so District 2 is the owner of the station, but North Highline is the operates it.
Just operates it now under a lease. And so if there were to be an annexation now, it's already in the city of Burien, so it wouldn't be in this annexation area at all. That station's not located, and it's also not an asset of North Highline Fire.
Correct.
See, so it wouldn't be affected by this annexation, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Well, no, one more thing. Well, if the annexation occurred in North Highline Fire District, it was dissolved, then there wouldn't be any personnel to be in Station 19.
No, but District 2, my client would own it, so it would probably use it. We just don't find that Station 19 is a very good response station for the western portion of our district. The response time from 19 over to the west is not good enough by our standards to serve North Burien. That number 18 is actually better located, but obviously that'll be gone.
Okay, thank you.
In other cases we've had, the contracts that are owned by an agency, or the contracts that agencies have, when someone assumes that agency, they assume all the contracts, and they have to fulfill those contracts as if they were the original agency. So how would that affect your arrangements? Seattle would have to step in, and so if you have a contract over to...
Well, our service agreement with North Highline is an annual contract.
So it would only last a year.
It has a provision that it expires at the end of this year, or it expires upon annexation.
Oh,
so
okay.
we've addressed that in the contract.
Okay.
Thank you.
One more question. I'm trying to understand the North Burien fire service arrangement shortfalls with annexation of North Highland. We have a response brief from the city of Seattle which indicates that the fire chief's willingness assistant fire chief's willingness to consider fire service provisions in North Burien, the North Burien portion of Fire District 2 by a contract similar to that which currently exists between Fire District 2 and 11, and at the upcoming meeting that's scheduled for June 29th is intended to be a three-way discussion between Seattle Fire, Fire District 11, and Fire District 12 to discuss terms of such an agreement. So, to me, that sounds like progress.
Sounds like a possibility.
Well, providing a contract that's similar to the current one, you would point to that.
There would be quite a few differences. But I think he means that the essence of it would be that service would come from Station 18 into North Burien, across the boundary line into North Burien from Seattle. And like I said, we certainly entertain an automatic aid agreement. We also certainly entertain a service agreement. But there hasn't been any indication until this hearing was scheduled in opposition to the annexation came forward that there would be any interest whatsoever in doing that. You would think that if they were proposing an annexation such as this, and a year ago, it hasn't been set for hearing until now, but it's been proposed for a year, you would have thought rather that someone would say, let's discuss that, because these parties talked in 2008 about the impacts on Burien. If they didn't know, why did they propose to provide land for a station from King County or any of the parties? So they saw back in 2008 what the impact was on North Burien, because they realized and they appreciated at that time, based upon our representatives at the meetings, the only way we got service in the North Burien that was an adequate response time was to come from Station 18. They knew that. That's been known for years. Thank you.
Thank you.
That finishes agency testimony. I think we're going to try to wrap up at about 9:30, but that does give us some time for public testimony this evening. If there are people who cannot return tomorrow evening, I'd like to give you first priority. And I would begin with Lois Shipper, because she has already informed me that tonight is her only night. So after that, if you are only able to be here tonight, please raise your hand, give me your name, and I'll try to accommodate you this evening.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. My name is Lois Shipper, and I live in the unincorporated area currently at 10735 22nd Avenue Southwest, with a Seattle address, although I'm not a Seattle resident at the same time. I'd like to speak. I'd like to consider one thing. I'd like to look around the room here. I'd like to think about the makeup of the unincorporated area. It's about 70% non-Caucasian, and if you look around the room, I'd say we need to do some different outreach. I know that you posted notices in the paper, et cetera, and I would appreciate any effort that the board can do to reach those non-English speaking communities and the diverse communities of White Center.
Okay. I will let you know that every poster we put up went up in Vietnamese, Spanish, and English. We posted in community centers. I'm not saying that we reached everybody. We posted in community centers, we posted in clinics, we posted in, for example, the Vietnamese market. And it might not yet be online, but we posted in 39 places, and virtually all of those were done in 3 languages.
So I work in Health and Human Services in White Center, and I know that often we need personal outreach to reach communities and have them understand our processes here. They're often newly immigrated, new arrivals to the country. So I appreciate that, but I do think that for you to hear from this audience is one part of information. There are resident meetings at Cielo Gardens, there are resident meetings at Greenbridge. There are other ways to at least inform those communities. I don't know that they have to come to a board meeting, but
we did reach out and offer to speak at those communities, and so far that was just not made available to us. I'm not trying to disagree with you. In fact, we have translator and interpreters here in Michigan that we will get a bigger outreach from that community to this room.
so is there an opportunity for me to let those communities know again?
Yeah,
Okay,
just about to
perfect.
say that, and they will be welcome here tomorrow night. We intend to have interpreters here tomorrow night as well.
Okay, so that was just about 10 seconds of my time. I'd also like to talk about your duty to preserve and provide municipal, or the duty of you to consider provision of municipal and government services. Like I said, I work in Health and Human Services, and I see that the opportunity to receive services under what exists in the city of Seattle is a far greater expanse than what we have right now. King County services, they don't run health and human services, they're actually health department services, but and I would say, I'm going to speak to fire first, because that's really been a topic of issue tonight. And we had a fire in our backyard. Some kids were setting off firecrackers. Our hillside went up in flames. It was on a dead end below us. There were no hydrants on that street. And I'll tell you who responded. 2 Seattle fire tanker trucks responded to bring the water to put that fire out and preserve that from coming up the hillside to our homes. And from where I sit in that area, I would rather be part of Seattle and have all of the resources of the Seattle Fire Department without there having to be an aid agreement for them to come and serve my residents in case of an issue. I also had a medical issue myself, and at the time, medics had to come from SeaTac, from the military road station, and it was, I think, about a 15-minute response time. I do understand that that recently changed with the transition to the downtown Burien location. I'd also like to talk about schools. I'm excited that the school boundary districts don't change with annexation. I have two kids that graduated from Highline schools. I've been very happy with Highline schools. What I am excited about is that there's a Seattle Family and Education Levy. There are enormous resources that come through that levy to serve the students in those schools, and we have a lot of need in the schools in the North Highline area, and they would benefit from those after-school services, health services that come to the school. They're working on responses to communities with trauma, and so I think all of those would be additional beneficial services that we would not receive in the in those North Highline schools if we were not annexed to Seattle. And I also think it's important for the consequences that there be discussion here about the consequences of not annexing, and the county talked about their inability to support our neighborhood with county resources. 67%, voted not to go to Burien, but I think there's a large portion of that no vote that are people that don't want to be annexed, and I'm not sure, we've talked about what Burien offers previously, we've talked now about what Seattle offers. There hasn't been, I don't think, enough education and discussion about what happens if nobody takes us and we continue to languish. Already our snow response has decreased. Like I said, I work in health and human services, and we only had roads plowed, blocks away from our clinic, so folks could not get there if they needed to during that really bad snowstorm a few years ago because the county had reduced their services. So I would just really encourage you. I think Seattle is the best option for this very urban, very diverse neighborhood. Seattle has a great neighborhood support plan, as they talked about, and we would become another neighborhood of Seattle that would be eligible for all those planning, matching grants, and health and human services. So thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for letting me go since I can't come tomorrow night.
Thanks. Question for the board.
Martha Hopper.
Good evening. I'm a resident of Seattle. I am a retiree from the King County Library System. So I'm going to talk about, during this, a little bit about the library system. Just down the street is a brand new White Center Library. $8.8 million construction costs paid for by a bond issue from King County Library. The document that you folks have about the library reciprocity agreement is in your packet has expired, so there is no agreement at the moment. The gentleman spoke about reciprocity, and I guess from my perspective, I would say there are all kinds of levels of reciprocity. I can go as a Seattle resident and join King County Libraries on their card and get books there. Up until recently, I could not put any items on hold. For 10 years, Seattle residents were not allowed to have holds at King County. That has recently been modified, and I can have 10 holds of books, and some of the holds for e-materials. I've not reached the maximum on that, so I don't know what would happen there. So I've got to say that there are also other things that Seattle Public Library does differently than King County does. So I guess my question is, what's going to happen to the White Center Library? I mean, right now it's in limbo, and you really need a neighborhood library. I think 17,000 people deserve one. I can't say that people, King County residents and Seattle residents are not treated equally for library services. I am really concerned about the policing. As you know, Seattle right now is 200 police short. The mayor has asked for 100 new police, and will be raising business taxes for that. The family and education levy, great idea, but I wonder what's going to happen with that portion of Highline School District that's not going to be eligible for services under that. And finally, for representation. You know, we in Seattle have just gone to a district for the city council, and, you know, depending upon when anything would go forward, people who live in this unincorporated area might have some time when they would not have representation because we will have to do a redistricting.
Questions from the board?
Thank you.
Ms. Hershey?
I missed your name, sorry.
Pardon?
What was your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Martha Toffrey, Tofferi.
Okay, Ms. Toffrey, thank you. You reminded me of the same question I had, which was additional explanation about the White Center Library. So I'll defer to City of Seattle to answer that in Toronto's rebuttal, if you can. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder.
Lana Anthony, followed by Dennis Eaton. Lana Anthony. Sorry.
Good evening, I'm Lana Anthony. I live in the unincorporated area, 10731 22nd Avenue Southwest. And personally, I'd like to hear much more from Seattle. I believe that Seattle has a lot to offer, and we should be allowed the opportunity to vote. Thank you.
I'm Dennis Eaton. I live at 10730 28th Avenue Southwest in the unincorporated area. I have some questions and concerns for Seattle. White Center would be one of the poorest areas of Seattle, and I'm not clear that Seattle would devote enough services to this area. What is the city planning to do with the money that they get from the state tax rebates that they're getting to annex this area? Will the money actually be used for improvements and services in this area, or will it go into the general fund and perhaps be used for something else? That's one question. Also, my question echoes Martha's, what's going to happen to the White Center Library? We need a library there. I just don't think the one that's 35th and Henderson is really close enough to a lot of people. One of my bigger concerns is the zoning. Right now, the area that I'm in is zoned R6, which means single-family residence, 6 lots per acre maximum. I understand that if Seattle annexes us, will be some zoning that requires or allows backyard residences. And one of the things I like about this area is the residential feel. I think I wouldn't like to have backyard residences, 1-story or 3-story going up in our backyard. So I understand that Seattle, somehow we're going to have to get annexed eventually anyway. Is Seattle the best option for us? I think we need to have more answers from Seattle if they will actually take care of this area and not neglect it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rose Clark. Oh, sorry. Rose Clark, followed by Pat Lemaine and Carol Stewart.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Rose Clark. I am a former deputy mayor of Burien, and I'm a 40-plus year volunteer with the Highline School District, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about tonight.
The City of Seattle and the Seattle School District are two separate and distinct legal bodies that have worked together for years. In the Highline School District, there are 4 separate cities: Burien, Des Moines, Normandy Park, SeaTac, as well as unincorporated King County. And these cities work together with Highline School District very well. While they have these good working relationships, having Seattle as part of the district raises different problems that should be worked out before an annexation proposal goes to the voters. For the Highline School District, having major increased zoning in any one part of the district can cause district-related problems throughout the district and thus through all of the cities. So let me explain. If similar zoning has been in place throughout the cities for the whole 75-year history of the Highline School District, growth has been manageable. However, if Seattle indeed does annex North Highline, there is concern that the higher density that Seattle normally has would have unforeseen impacts that would impact the whole Highline School District. If current Seattle density were to become a part of North Highline planning, it could have 2 potential impacts on the Highline School District. 1, overcrowded schools in this part of Seattle could cause Highline schools to have to implement boundary changes that will fall throughout the district. And secondly, the same thing would happen potentially with having to buy land and build new schools. So I would propose, I have 2 proposals to offer you. That the annexation process be slowed to allow time for the Seattle School District and the Highline School District to negotiate and consider if the effective Highline School District schools should be transferred to the Seattle School District with the appropriate asset transfers. Or that the City of Seattle would agree that their zoning would be more reflective of the zoning throughout the Highline School District. The residents of the cities of Burien, Des Moines, Normandy Park, and SeaTac must be protected from impacts that would affect their schools through property tax regulation. And from my point of view, create a potential school district tax throughout the area just caused by one city's annexation. So thank you for your time. I also sent you some testimony that made. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Pat Romaine and Carol Sibbert.
Yes.
And these will be the last 2 to talk to the board tonight.
I have some show and tell. This is what's been happening on Myers Way lately, past the Seattle.
Hello. Huh? Mark? If you want, I would be more than happy to upload these to the site we have for public
If
record.
you want the board to look at it, we have to make them part of the record.
Okay, I would be more than happy to do that for you. You probably might find it.
Well, if you're gonna, it'll just take a second, but if you're gonna refer to them in your testimony, it would be a cleaner record if you refer to them by number.
They're not going to be, anyway, we can work on that.
Do we mark them?
Anyway.
No, Angelica, Angelica, could you mark these maps, please, in Exhibit C? Thank you.
Okay. Yes, my name is Pat Lewin. I live at 10127 Myers Way South in unincorporated King County. Lots to talk about, but mainly I'm going to concern ourselves on the homeless situation that is all happening on the Seattle side of our border on Myers Way. For many of us, the situation on Myers Way has become intolerable. At a recent city council meeting, it was remarked that the Myers Way RV camp is a model of how to run an RV safe zone. For us who live on Myers Way, it has become a hub for drug dealing, laundering site for stolen goods, has had 2 people die from overdose in under 6 months, is a contributor to poisoning our streams and salmon habitat, an unsightly mess with mounds of garbage and human waste, a public nuisance that has made many of us feel unsafe in our own neighborhood, and encourages those who like this way of life not to seek help and or to integrate back into society. Myers Way has become Seattle's human dumping ground. Seattle should be focused on discouraging this kind of behavior and put more pressure on the homeless to seek the help that is offered and that they need. Furthermore, it is the Myers Way mess as an example of how Seattle is going to treat North Highline if we get annexed. King County enforces their parking, trespassing, and vagrancy laws for all. If you are homeless in Seattle, Seattle does not. What I am afraid of, and many of my neighbors are also, is if we get annexed by Seattle, is the same leniency they have toward Myers Way will extend to the streets in front of our homes, just like what's happening in Ballard. Also, finding out about this meeting from a paper stapled to a power pole is outrageous. My Carol here has a photo taken of one of your power poles. It's just strictly in English. Last time this annexation went through, you guys had the decency of doing a mass mailing to everybody in our community. Can I assume that this is going to be the as dirty an election as the last one? I mean, you need to let us know what's going on and just how you've done it. Like I said, I didn't find out about this meeting until Thursday. For me, the last annexation attempt quite literally turned into a battle of good versus evil. Or to put it another way, if you know a woman is being abused by her boyfriend, would you encourage her to marry her abuser? What Seattle is doing to our community is abuse. Just go down to Myers Way right now and see what's going on. Okay, I'm just about done. Anyway, Burien did not respect our community. It appears Seattle doesn't either. I would encourage you to come out to our community and to actually see the problem and to deal with it. Because this is really a big issue. Like I say, there's a whole ton of other things, but I think my time's probably running out. But anyway, have a good one. Any questions, Mr. Lee?
I did have a question. I came up Myers Way when I came to the meeting today, and so I didn't know where the city limits were there. And could you describe a little bit about? I saw a lot of campers on the side of the road and off to the side.
Right, that's all in the Seattle boundary. It's just due north. I can point to your map over there. But basically, all the homeless you saw are in Seattle. And as soon as you run into homes, you're down in unincorporated King County.
Okay. Because there weren't any homes in that immediate area.
Correct. That's that's all city-owned property that's up for sale right now. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
I could waive my time or come back tomorrow, but we did get a picture of just the one in English that's on my phone, so that would be another exhibit, I guess. And I do believe that the library thing was sort of, the way they made it sound is we were going to be able to keep the White Center Library, just for others that, I've been to most of the meetings locally around here. The experts spoke on that already, and from what I know, it will be, either way we can have it, but I'm, for the record, against annexation as of now until we can solve the issues. And I don't know if there's a time that we can show these to people, or what's the procedure on the photos?
Well, I'll respond to that.
Okay, go ahead.
They're not part of the record, and the board will look at them as part of the deliberate.
And so do you keep those for the 10 days? I think I read on
We keep them if
something.
the board decides, then we
Okay.
keep them for another 30 days period.
I think that's fine. I just don't know if he's got to know that, so he's leaving that. So. And
frankly, after that 30-day period, if the board's decision should be challenged in Superior Court, then they give it to Superior Court.
okay, might be worth what we've done. Yeah, okay, just wanting to know, and I may be back tomorrow. I'm not sure, but I know he's back.
Okay.
Because it's not quite 9:30, I'll call a few more people. I'm sorry I can't read this handwriting, but I believe it's Sue Samsa.
Excuse me, there's one person that can't be there tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Also, they want to take
Come on. They want to explain to them. They want to
please.
Thank you.
Name
Thank you very
and
much.
name. Sure.
Yeah, Brian Hastings, 606 Southwest 116th Street, Seattle. I'm here to talk about the evergreen pole. Not as sexy as the big, bold firefighters, but we provide an important service. My nonprofit's been running the evergreen pole for the last 6 years. We've run it because this area can't support it. And in 6 years, we've taught 10,000 of our kids to swim. 10,000. Of those 10,000, 6,000 have been either reduced or free. And that shows about the impoverished kids that we have coming to the pool. I'm happy to do that. Happy to do that. But every other pool in King County built at the same time, when they all reverted back after the bond ended in 2010, they all get $50,000 to $100,000 to keep the systems of the pool running. We have no money in this area. I go out and I fundraise constantly. We need more financial support. We got a lot of money that way, over there. That's what we need. And it's crazy that we aren't looking at the financial surety that we're going to get with that. That's our community resource, that pool that we all use. We've taught your grandkids to swim. And we'll keep doing it. But that whole systems are going to fail. We can only go so far. So, I'm pleading with you, we need the extra support. It's not here, it is not here anywhere. I visit all of the councils, I visit all the politicians, I go to all the agencies. I get as many grants as we can get. There's nothing left. And I'm one small entity, I get it. But I'm not unlike the others that want to provide services to this area. Okay? That's it, I'm going to cut you free. I am not a lawyer. I wanted to say that. We don't come up there. Thank you for your time.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Ponez. So are you for or against Seattle annexing the area?
Oh, gee, I thought I made that clear. I'm for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was going to be my question. When to the left when you said you were looking for...
Am I wrong? Wherever Seattle is good. Yes, thank you. Good catch. 606 Southwest 116. It's right next to Evergreen High School.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Yeah, I gave you a letter too. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Earl Long. Earl Lane.
What was the name you called earlier?
Sue Samsa. Mark Upgus.
I'll pass and give somebody else an opportunity.
Okay. Christine Edgar. Well, we got shy people here all the time. There we go.
Christine's
Hello, my name is Justine Edgar, can you hear me? And I live at 1811 Southwest 152nd Street here in Washington. And I was present at the last annexation hearings that referred to this area. And so I'm a bit familiar with what the issues were then. And one of the rules of annexation, and I don't think I need to educate you folks, is that any area that is taken by an entity is to be provided with services at the level that it currently has or greater. So those individuals who've stepped forward and said, oh, we'll get less services, well, that is not one of the conditions of annexation. They must abide by the rules of annexation that have been set out. The second thing is, at the last annexation hearings, one of the things that again was a problem with these fire stations. And the ruling of this board at that time was that you could rule as a board, and the particulars of operation and the agreements after you had made the ruling could still be taken care of. And so in fact you did make a ruling to allow possible annexation to Burien, without all the particulars having been worked out, the operation. And I believe that in part of the thing, and I'm not sure because it's so unclear to me, of what came out of the 2012 agreement was worked out after you'd already made a ruling about it. So I'm not sure why there's now this big flurry that this cannot go on when this was allowed before. Okay? As long as there was a provision that individuals would work together, they would work together in a positive fashion that the board could rule prior to that all being worked out. Another thing that I would like to make a point of is that Seattle is much more equipped to provide human services to this area, and that came out in 2012. When Burien attempted to do it, it had $200,000 for it, and the cost to run the area, and this was in 2012, $1.5 million. So really the only city that has the capacity to provide for the human services in this area is Seattle. For that reason, I urge you to approve this to move forward with the city of Seattle. Thank you.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I think somebody put excuse me, King County Housing Authority.
Yeah, we're almost, so why don't we try and get it?
So you testifying to the private citizen or
Hi, my name is Jennifer Mayer Johnson, and I'm here tonight representing King County Housing Authority. For those of you who aren't familiar, within the White Center area, we operate two Hope 6 mixed income communities, Viola Gardens, which is right where we're at, as well as Greenbridge, which is just down the street, which many of you are probably familiar with. Between our mixed income communities and our Housing Choice Voucher Program, we house approximately 10% of the population in White Center. And so for us, the city to be able to bring in an urban level of services is very important to us. We house seniors, we house disabled persons, and we house working families. Along with that, we house 10% of the kids who go to Highline schools. So we're very interested in getting those services, the preschool for all. We've made our own investments in education. We have Head Start facilities at both of those mixed income communities, and we think that bringing the preschool to all would be a joy, as well as the after-school programs. There will be no change in operations. We will retain those properties. So with that, we support a higher level of services and trust that the operational issues would be worked out on or near an annexation. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
Yes, the title of your organization is King County Housing Authority, and is your service area exactly consistent with King County boundaries?
Not exactly, close. It's King County except for Seattle and the city of Renton. Although we do have some properties in the city of Renton that were there before Renton formed their own housing authority.
Also excludes those with housing.
For new development. So King County Housing Authority has been around, formed 76 years ago. Renton Housing Authority is much younger. So properties that we have within the city bounds of Renton that were there before they formed their own housing authority, we retain those. So after an annexation, King County Housing Authority would continue to retain the properties that we own and operate in White Center.
And does the agency have plans or policies on growth and services, in other words, new properties and housing?
We wish we could anywhere in King County. We don't have any plans at this time for new public housing. There will be There is still in development at the Green Bridge community for private developers to bring in market rate housing, but there's no plans for more public housing.
And where is that located? The one you just mentioned?
Green Bridge is off of Roxbury and 8th.
So in which
Just north of here.
jurisdiction? In which jurisdiction is that?
It's currently in the annexation. Yeah, it's in the annexation area.
Thank you.